My name is Eli Granger, and this land has been in my family longer than statehood. You don't just buy the Granger Ranch. You live in it, bleed in it, bury your people under the mesquite trees, and feed cattle by the moonlight. My grandfather broke this ground with his bare hands, and my father kept it alive through drought, debt, and 5 heart attacks. When I came back from Afghanistan, I didn't inherit the ranch, I earned it. So when a woman I'd never seen before strutted across my southern pasture in stiletto heels, waving a folder and claiming she'd purchased it all, I thought I was hallucinating. "Excuse me," I asked, stepping off my porch with a half-full mug of black coffee. She didn't blink, just pointed at my barn like it was a fixer-upper on Zillow. "I'm Realtor Karen Whitfield, and I represent the new owner of this property." I laughed. I actually laughed. "Lady, I am the owner. My great-grandfather's name is carved into the gatepost." She tilted her sunglasses down, clearly annoyed. "You must be Eli Granger." Then, the squatter, my hand tightened around the mug. "You'd better walk that word back real quick." Her smile was smooth as snake oil. "The deed was filed 2 days ago. I have the paperwork right here. Now, if you'll kindly remove your belongings within 72 hours, we can avoid any legal complications." She handed me a yellow manila envelope like she was blessing me with a coupon. I didn't even open it. I just tore it in half and let the pieces fall at her feet. She gasped. "That's a legal document." "No need, ma'am," I said. "That's trespassing with extra steps." The sheriff came the next day. I knew Dan Bennett since high school, same man who let me shoot my first rifle under supervision at the county fair. He looked embarrassed as hell walking up the gravel drive. She filed a formal claim. "Eli," he said, "says there's a title transfer in her client's name." I opened the gate for him, slow and deliberate. "You believe that Dan sighed?" "No. But the paperwork's in the system. And until the judge rules on ownership, I can't remove her. She's listed as co-occupant with your property manager's sign-off." I blinked. "Property manager?" "Yeah, a guy named Brian Ellis signed a release form last week." "Did you hire him?" "No, I sure as hell didn't. Dan kicked the dust." "She's good. I'll give her that." "Loopholes. Filed just right. It's got the county clerk tied in knots. And I can't help you until we prove it's fraudulent." I nodded. "Then we'd better prove it fast." That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my grandfather's old desk, spread out the original 1903 deed under a reading lamp, and started calling every lawyer in 3 counties who still answered phones after 8 p.m. Most said the same thing: if it's fraud, we'll beat it, but prepare for court. Months, maybe longer. But I didn't have months. Karen was already back the next day, this time with a moving truck. She had 2 men unload a white prefab HOA sign on my front fence property, managed by Pine Bluff Residential Oversight Committee. The HOA, fake HOA. I hadn't heard those 3 letters since I left the suburbs years ago, and suddenly they were staked in the middle of my heritage like a cursed totem. "You have 48 hours to vacate," she chirped, "or we'll assess fines for noncompliance." I stared at the sign, then at her. "You realize this is a working ranch. I've got livestock, machinery, a disabled vet who lives 2 cabins down and can't even drive. You're not running an HOA, you're playing Monopoly with real lives." She smirked. "Then you'd better roll the dice, sweetheart." By the weekend, things got worse. She installed surveillance cameras on the fence posts, slapped violations on my tractor, my chicken coop, and even the saddle stand outside the barn. Claimed my ranch failed visual harmony compliance. Daryl, my foreman, lost it. She wrote me up for hanging laundry. She tried to tow my truck. Said my neighbor Sheila. She fined my daughter for riding her pony near the fence line. Karen had turned a generational ranch into a war zone of citations. But I wasn't just sitting around. I dug into her. Turns out, Karen Whitfield had been managing property across 3 states under different LLCs, all collapsed. Her Pine Bluff committee wasn't even real. It was a single post office box in Tempe and a WordPress site with broken links. She'd been running this scam for years, and I was going to end it. The final straw came when I found her walking inside my grandfather's barn. "No trespassing means you too," I growled. stepping through the side door. She was on the phone, laughing. Yes, it has full stables, and the acreage includes mineral rights. She turned and screamed when she saw me. I should have you arrested, she shouted, clutching her purse. For what? Rescuing my barn from real estate theft. She stormed out, but not before snapping photos of the old war medals mounted above the tack hooks. That night, I filed the formal civil theft complaint, and I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 10 years, my old squad mate, now an investigator for the state real estate board. By Monday, everything shifted. We had evidence, we had affidavits, and we had the original handwritten deed signed in 1903 kept in a climate-controlled safe in the town's historical archive. The county clerk called me in person. We're freezing her claim, he said, pending a hearing, but you need to show up in court. I said one word gladly. The sun hadn't risen yet when I backed my truck down the driveway, kicking dust across the gate where that ridiculous HOA sign still hung. I left it there on purpose. Let the judge see the insult with his own eyes when the case went public. Daryl met me by the mailbox. He handed me a folded brown envelope with one hand and a strong cup of coffee in the other. You take her down. Eli. For all of us. Inside the envelope, my grandfather's war photos, the deed, Karen's fake violations, and the old ranch map he'd drawn by hand, showing every inch of the 212-acre boundary lines. I nodded. This ends today. We didn't get a typical judge. We got Judge Mayweather, old, sharp-eyed, and meaner than a barbed wire fence on a cold morning. The kind of man who smelled lies from 20 feet off and was known to fine attorneys who blinked too slow. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Karen had brought in a full legal team, 4 people in matching suits, all shuffling binders and whispering like snakes in a nest. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit, pearls, and a look of total smug confidence. The bailiff had to remind her twice to put her phone away. She didn't see me until I walked in holding the old hat. Her smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. Then Judge Mayweather entered, and the room froze. Case 43B, the clerk called, Whitfield Realty and Associates versus Elijah Granger. Karen's lead attorney stood. Your Honor, my client has legally purchased this property. Sit, Mayweather said. I read the brief. You'll talk when I ask. The room exhaled. I stood, hands at my sides. Sir, I have lived on and worked that ranch my entire life. I have the original deed dated 1903, notarized, archived, and filed. I have no knowledge of any legal sale, and I never hired any property manager. Do you have the document, the judge asked? I handed it to the bailiff. Yes, Your Honor. The bailiff brought it forward. Mayweather took his glasses off, squinted, and ran his finger along the edge of the yellowed paper. He set it down. That's older than my courthouse. Karen's lawyer stood again. We believe Mr. Granger's document, though original, is outdated. My client acted in good faith on a new title processed by a certified manager. And where is this manager? Mayweather asked. We're attempting to contact Strike One. Then I dropped the next bomb. I called my first witness, Sheila Norris, retired librarian and head of the County Historical Committee. She walked straight back to the stand and unfolded a laminated reproduction of the 1903 town land grant map. This ranch has never changed hands. Not legally, she said. There's no record of sale, no split lots, and no zoning requests approved for residential development. Karen visibly squirmed. I looked over. She wasn't smiling now. Next came Daryl, who testified about the so-called property manager. I've worked for Eli 10 years. Nobody named Brian ever managed anything. And Karen here, she walked onto our land with a clipboard and started finding chickens. The courtroom chuckled. Karen's lawyer objected. Irrelevant. Overruled, Mayweather said, hiding a smirk. And then came the final blow. My friend Marcus. Marcus was now a state investigator with the Real Estate Commission. He walked in wearing a badge and carrying a folder thick enough to choke a steer. We've been monitoring Miss Whitfield's activity for 6 months. She's filed property transfers under a shell HOA entity in 3 different counties. She uses the Pine Bluff name to push false compliance notices, then pressures owners to vacate. We've filed preliminary fraud charges pending this case's outcome. Karen bolted to her feet. That's slander. Mayweather pounded the gavel. You'll sit down or I'll have you escorted out. She sat. Marcus opened the folder and passed around copies of her emails promising quiet buyouts, land leverage tactics, and pressuring old-timers to move on. She looked like a ghost in designer shoes. Then it was my turn again. I walked slowly to the front of the courtroom, carrying one last piece of paper. A letter from my father. I found it in the back of his desk 2 days before court. It was written in tight, looping pen, addressed to me. If they ever try to take this land, remind them it wasn't bought with money. It was bought with blood. I read the line out loud. You could have heard a pin drop. I folded the paper, stepped back, and said this land is part of who we are. And no fake HOA scam, no forged deed, no greedy realtor is going to erase that. Judge Mayweather took exactly 4 minutes. When he returned, his voice cut clean through the room. Ownership remains with Mr. Granger. Ms. Whitfield is hereby ordered to remove all false structures and signage within 72 hours. A criminal complaint for fraud is being submitted to the district attorney's office. This court is adjourned. Bam! Karen didn't even look at me as she walked out, but her knees were shaking. And for the first time, her heels looked like shackles. The cameras were waiting outside. That night, back at the ranch, I pulled down the fake HOA sign. Neighbors clapped from porches. Sheila brought pie. Daryl brought beer. I looked around at the faces that had stood with me, not just for land, but for legacy, for something that couldn't be printed or forged or filed away in some office. I raised a toast to Granger Ranch. They echoed it back, and for the first time in months, the ranch felt alive again. The morning after the court ruling, I figured things would quiet down. They didn't. If anything, the noise got louder. The local paper ran the headline across the front page. Rancher defeats fake, a HOA scam in landmark fraud case. Karen's name was printed in bold. My family's history made the feature article. The original 1903 deed, yellow and beautiful, was framed and photographed like it belonged in a museum. But victory didn't bring peace. Because a person like Karen doesn't vanish with one court loss. She rots loud. It started with the mail. 10 letters in one day, each one some form of intent to appeal, all of them unsigned, delivered in envelopes bearing no return address. The tone was venomous, dripping with empty threats and legal nonsense about easement claims in post-trial negotiations. Then came the cars, unmarked sedans that idled outside the ranch for hours. The same realtor associates who testified in court now sat on public roads, snapping pictures of the ranch like they were paparazzi waiting for blood. I didn't bite. I just documented everything. Time-stamped it all. Called Marcus, who told me, let them play their games. We're building a bigger one. But then, something worse happened. 2 days later, I woke to find my south fence line cut, barbed wire slashed, wooden posts yanked out and burned in a pile like kindling. Someone had driven straight through the opening and churned up the land with tire tracks, deep ruts across my winter hayfield. I walked out there in the dark with a flashlight, boots crunching against frost. And there, scrawled in fluorescent spray paint on the side of a feed trough, not yours forever. That's when I knew Karen wasn't finished. She'd lost the courtroom. Now she was waging war in the dirt. I filed a report. The sheriff came out, eyes tired and full of quiet rage. I'll be honest, Eli, we can't tie this to her directly, but we're watching. That wasn't enough. So I doubled my perimeter cameras, hired a night guard, old Nate from the feed store, who used to do security back in his military days, gave him a warm shed, a radio, and a thermos of strong coffee. He patrolled every night. Still, the tension crawled. It got under skin and into muscle. Even the horses started acting skittish near the front pastures, like they could smell something foul in the air. Then came the broadcast. A week after the verdict, a local podcaster named Marcy Lee did a full expose. She'd attended the trial, she'd dug through the county property records, and most importantly, she got her hands on the full list of Karen's other fake HOA targets. 12 families across 3 counties, elderly widows, young veterans, working-class folks too overworked or afraid to fight back. Marcy laid it all out in a 30-minute firebomb of an episode called Land Theft in Suburbia. The Realtor You Don't Know. It went viral. Reddit picked it up. Then Facebook. Then the local NBC affiliate came knocking on my door with a camera crew. "You're the guy who beat Karen Whitfield in court, right?" I almost laughed. Apparently, that was my new identity now. Karen responded the only way she knew how, by trying to bury the truth. Her public statement hit Twitter the next morning, a carefully worded wall of victimhood. She painted herself as a misunderstood businesswoman, wrongly targeted by rural extremists with ties to fringe land rights movements. She even used the word militant. Me, Eli Granger, 42, who rescues stray dogs and teaches kids how to mend wire fences. Militant. My inbox exploded. Support poured in from folks who knew better, from lawyers, old landowners, ranchers, veterans, even a retired judge who mailed me a handwritten note saying, "Land isn't just property, it's inheritance. Thank you for standing up." But there was hate too. Anonymous emails. A phone call from a burner number. "You made her look weak. Now you'll regret it." That same night, a dead chicken was left on my porch, wrapped in one of Karen's fake HOA brochures. I hit my limit, not out of fear, out of fury. I called Marcus. "I'm done playing defense." He exhaled. "Good, because we just got a subpoena approved. She forged your name, Eli. Not once, 4 times. It's officially criminal now." "Then I'll see her in court again," I said. Marcus chuckled darkly. "Nope, not court. We're taking this federal." The next week, a federal marshal showed up at Karen's door. He served her with papers for criminal real estate fraud, wire fraud, and forgery. The charges stretched across county lines. This wasn't just a bad civil case anymore. This was time. Karen screamed when the warrant was read. She claimed it was a setup, that I was using military-grade manipulation, that this was all about destroying her career. But it was too late. She was no longer a realtor. Her license was revoked. Her office lease was terminated. And the HOA she faked shut down. Every violation she'd filed officially nullified. And me, I didn't want revenge. I wanted restoration. So I invited every neighbor she'd hurt to the ranch that Sunday. We had a bonfire. Kids played in the pasture. Sheila brought cornbread. And I stood by the fire, holding that old deed up to the flame, not to burn, but to show it still held. "Land is only yours," I said, "if you treat it with respect." They nodded. That night, the stars came out clean and sharp. No cameras, no reporters, just honest dirt beneath our boots and laughter in the cold air. By the time the federal case made headlines, Karen Whitfield's name had become synonymous with greed. Local stations began calling her the HOA Phantom, a fraudster in pearls who weaponized paperwork and charm. But this wasn't charm anymore. This was criminal. Marcus called me the morning the indictment dropped. 3 counts of real estate fraud, 2 of forgery, federal wire fraud. She could be looking at 20 years. "Eli." I stood on my porch, watching the mist roll off the pastures. For once, it felt quiet. I nodded, letting the phone hang by my side. I didn't need revenge. I just needed her to stop. But Karen wouldn't go down without dragging her heels through the dirt. She held a press conference. On the steps of her now vacated real estate office, she stood with a neck brace, a fake limp, and a lawyer who looked like he regretted every life choice that brought him to this moment. She cried on cue. She blamed me, claimed her emails were hacked, her documents altered, and that I had used my military background to intimidate her into silence. The backlash was immediate. The HOA she created dissolved. The 3 board members all exposed as her friends using fake names. A video surfaced, a leaked clip from her office security camera. It showed her laughing with one of those friends, saying, I could sell air to a rancher if I just slap a fence around it. That clip alone was played over 2 million times in 48 hours. Neighbors who had once stayed quiet began speaking out. An elderly couple down the road admitted they'd been fined $200 by Karen for having a clothesline. Another neighbor said she was told to paint her barn in accordance with community aesthetics or face eviction. She had built her empire not on real rules but on fear. The more people learned, the more furious they became. Protest signs started showing up outside her gated condo. Justice for Granger. Land isn't a business card. Fake HOAs. Real crimes. Then the news broke about her finances. She had mortgaged her condo to cover legal fees. Her accounts were frozen. Her Mercedes repossessed. Suddenly, Karen was on foot. And when she walked through town, no one offered a ride. Even the Realtors Association issued a formal apology not just to me, but to every landowner she'd ever targeted. They called her an aberration, a betrayal of the profession, but me, I called her a lesson. Then came the sentencing hearing. I was there, clean boots, button-down shirt, my hands folded in my lap as the judge read the charges. Karen, in a tan suit 2 sizes too big, looked nothing like the tyrant who trespassed on my land. She looked tired, worn, but not sorry. She never once looked my way, but I looked at her. I didn't smile, because justice isn't about smiling. It's about balance, and balance, at last, was being restored. The judge sentenced her to 6 years in federal prison, with mandatory restitution payments to every victim she'd defrauded. Her lawyer tried to bargain for probation. The judge shut it down. When it was over, I walked out the courthouse doors into the sunlight. Reporters crowded around. One of them asked, "Do you think justice was served?" I paused. "Justice isn't about revenge." I said, "It's about making sure no one else gets hurt the same way." That quote ran on the evening news, but I didn't stick around to see it. I went home, sat by the fire, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night. The week after Karen's sentencing, something shifted in the land. Not physically, no, but something deeper. Like the soil itself exhaled, the fear that had seeped into every fence post, every footstep across the pasture it lifted, and in its place pride. I started fixing what she broke. The south fence line was rebuilt stronger this time. I let my boy pick the color of the new gate. He picked green, said it looked like the pines that framed the back trail. So we painted it together. Neighbors dropped by, first out of curiosity, then out of camaraderie. Sheila brought over biscuits and jars of peach preserves. The Lopez family offered to help fix the old irrigation line that Karen's goons had damaged. Nate, the old security guard, still showed up on weekends, even though I stopped paying him. "Just habit now," he'd say, sipping coffee on the porch. We became a community again, not under a homeowners association, not under threat, but under shared sweat and soil. A month later, I hosted a town cookout, right there in the East Pasture. We cleared out the grass, hauled in picnic tables, and put a band up on the flatbed. I grilled ribs. The kids played tag in the hayfield, and folks from 5 towns over showed up, some who'd never met me, but knew the story, knew the ranch. One woman, soft-spoken with a cane and sun-spotted hands, tapped my shoulder and said, "My husband fought her, too. We couldn't afford the court, but we're proud you did." That meant more than the verdict. That was healing. And then one morning, I found a package at my gate. No name, just a worn box with a bundle of folded papers inside. I unwrapped them slowly. It was a journal. My great-grandfather's. Apparently, Karen had stolen it when she trespassed the first time, probably hoping to find something valuable. It was filled with inked pages from 1904 crop notes, rain patterns, hand-drawn maps of the ranch before the barn was even built. And on the last page, scrawled in fading pencil, "This land is our blood, not just for keeping, but for protecting, even when no one's watching." I sat on the porch holding that journal like it was a newborn. I didn't cry, but my hands shook. I'd protected it, Even when no one was watching, Karen never apologized. I didn't expect her to. Last I heard, she tried to appeal her sentence. Denied. She'll serve her time in a facility 3 counties over. No more limousines. No more press conferences. Just bars and time. But honestly, that's not how I measure the end. The end came when I reopened the barn for school tours again. When I let kids feed the goats and ask questions about the old black and white photos on the walls. When a little girl tugged my flannel shirt and said, "Your ranch smells like safety." That's when I knew we weren't just fixing a fence. We were fixing trust. And so I ask you now, what does justice look like in your community? Is it punishment or is it repair? Because the truth is, Karen didn't just trespass on my land. She trespassed on an idea that the little guy can be pushed, that the powerful can fake rules and we'll all roll over. But not this time. Not here. Not again. Have you or your community faced something similar? When rules are abused by the powerful? What should justice look like? Share your thoughts below because someone out there might need your story to find the courage to fight back.